All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yes.
This time we're going to be talking about a really interesting film called Tales from the Hood.
It's a classic.
It's a classic,
Yeah.
right? And I think most people, when they think about this film, they think about
Anthology.
Anthology. Yeah, that's right.
It's an anthology film.
It's an anthology film, so for people who don't know what that is.
It's basically a collection of short stories.
Yeah.
All kind of wrapped up in like framing narrative.
Yeah, like a wraparound story.
Yeah, wraparound.
That kind of ties them all together.
Exactly.
And in this case, the wraparound story is actually set in South Central Los Angeles.
Which adds a whole other dimension.
It really does. It really adds to the kind of the atmosphere and the intensity of the film. And I think it's really smart how they use that setting to kind of also reflect some of the social issues that are being explored in these stories.
Yeah, the setting itself becomes a character in a way.
It really does.
You know, reflecting the anxieties and the realities of the Black community at that time.
Yeah, and then you have this framing story with these three drug dealers, Stackball and Bulldog.
Quite the names, right?
I love those names.
Yeah.
They're walking into this funeral home.
Yeah.
Run by Mr. Sims.
Who was played by
oh my God.
iconic Clarence Williams III.
I mean,
it's just such a perfect casting.
Chills, literally.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about an intense performance. I mean, he's got this quiet intensity that you just...
Oh, he just draws you in.
Draws you in. You're like, okay, something's not right here.
You know something's going to happen, but you're not sure what it is.
But you want to know.
Yeah.
And so he kind of uses these stories to kind of lead them on this journey and also to teach them a lesson.
And each story acts as like a commentary on a different social issue.
Yeah.
That was prevalent in the Black community at the time.
It's like police brutality, child abuse, racism, gang violence, all of these really heavy topics.
Yeah, and they're all woven into these terrifying tales.
Yeah, so let's start with the first story. Rogue Cop Revelation.
Yeah, this one's a doozy.
It really is. I mean, this is the one that I think sticks with you the most.
I think so, too.
Just because it's so raw and it's so real and it's so relevant, even today.
It's unflinching in its portrayal of police brutality.
It really is. Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because it centers on this young Black police officer named Clarence.
Who's a rookie.
He's a rookie, right? He's just starting out. And he witnesses his partners, who are these seasoned cops, brutalizing a Black city councilman.
Who's an activist.
Who's activist.
Yeah.
Right. He's speaking out against police corruption.
And they silence him in the most brutal way.
It's a really tough scene to watch.
It is.
I mean, you're kind of sitting there as a viewer and you're thinking like, oh my God, is Clarence going to...
Is he going to say something?
Is he going to do something?
Is he going to be complicit?
And then, of course,
the twist.
The twist, the murdered councilman comes back.
As a vengeful zombie.
As a vengeful zombie, right?
Seeking justice.
It's brilliant. I mean, it's not just a horror trope. It's actually like a metaphor for how this injustice continues to haunt those in power.
It makes you think, right?
It does. It really makes you think, like, how complicit are we when we see these things happening and we don't...
When we stay silent, when we don't stand up for what's right.
Exactly.
You become part of the problem.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
And it's delivered in this really effective way through this horror genre.
Yeah. They don't shy away from the violence.
They don't.
And the gore.
But it's not gratuitous.
No.
It's all there for a reason.
It serves the story.
Yeah. It's to make you feel uncomfortable.
To make you think.
To make you think.
To make you confront these issues that we often try to avoid. Okay,
so let's move on to the second story. Boys do get bruised.
Now, this one is a bit different.
Yeah, this one is a bit more, I don't know if I'd say subtle, but it's definitely more psychological. Yeah, it's more about the kind of the internal horror that's going on.
Yeah, the trauma.
Yeah, the trauma that this young boy, Walter, is experiencing.
At the hands of his abuser.
Right. And so he uses his drawings as a way to
escape.
Escape.
To cope.
Yeah, to cope with what's happening to him. And of course, in this world,
his drawings have a supernatural effect.
Right.
They come to life.
Yeah, and I think what's really effective about this story is that it taps into this universal experience of using our imagination.
Especially as children.
Especially as children, right?
We all had imaginary friends.
We all had imaginary worlds.
Ways to escape the realities of our lives.
Of our lives, but in this case, it's taken to this really dark and disturbing extreme.
Where the lines between fantasy and reality become blurred.
Yeah, and I think what's also interesting is that you're kind of rooting for Walter in this story.
You want him to.
You want him to get his revenge.
To find some kind of justice.
Yeah, and when his drawings start to kind of manifest in this really terrifying way.
You almost feel a sense of satisfaction.
You do.
It's like, yes, finally.
Yeah, he's getting his power back.
He's fighting back.
Yeah, it's really effective.
It is, and I think it speaks to that primal desire for justice that we all have.
Yeah.
You know, when we see someone being wronged, we want to see the wrongdoer punished.
And even if it takes supernatural means.
Even if it takes supernatural means, we want to see that balance restored.
Absolutely.
So it's a very cathartic story in a way.
All right, so let's move on to the third story. KKK Comeuppance.
This one's a bit more on the nose.
Yeah, it's definitely more overt.
In its social commentary.
Yeah, I mean, the title kind of gives it away.
Yeah, there's no subtlety there.
No subtlety whatsoever.
It's about a racist Southern senator.
Very clearly modeled after
David Duke,
Yeah.
who decides to set up his campaign headquarters.
in a former slave plantation.
Big mistake.
Huge mistake.
Talk about bad karma.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just like waiting for something terrible to happen to this guy.
Yeah, he's just asking for it.
And of course, something terrible does happen.
It involves dolls.
Creepy, vengeful dolls.
Animated by the souls of tortured slaves.
That's right.
They come to life and they seek their revenge.
And it is gruesome.
Oh, it's very gruesome.
Very gruesome.
But also very satisfying.
Yeah, you're kind of like, yeah, you deserve that.
Yeah, you reap what you sow.
That's right. And I think what's really interesting about this story is that it uses these dolls,
Yeah,
which are often seen as these kind of innocent childhood objects.
right.
But in this case, they're transformed into these,
Instruments of terror.
yeah, instruments of terror. And they represent the historical trauma
That's embedded in that place.
that's embedded in that place, right?
In that plantation.
In that plantation.
And in the very foundation of this country.
And I think it's really effective how they use that imagery
To kind of visualize that historical trauma.
to visualize it,
And
right?
to show that it's not something that's just in the past.
Right, it's still with us.
It still haunts us.
Abs-
And it can manifest in really terrifying ways.
And speaking of terrifying ways,
Oh, yes.
let's talk about the fourth story.
Hardcore convert.
Hardcore convert. This one is,
This one is intense.
this one's intense. It's really intense.
And it's probably the most disturbing of all the stories.
Yeah, I would agree.
Just in terms of the imagery and the themes that it explores.
It follows this character
Crazy K.
who is
Yeah.
a ruthless gang member.
Right. And he ends up in this.
Mysterious underground prison.
Yeah, it's very kind of like Kafka-esque.
Yeah, very surreal.
Yeah, you're not really sure
Where he is.
where he is, how he got there.
Who's running this place.
Yeah, it's all very mysterious.
And he's subjected to this intense psychological torture.
By this doctor
Dr. Cushing.
who's trying to
Rehabilitate him.
rehabilitate him, right?
But his methods are
Questionable.
very questionable, to say the least.
Yeah, and I think what's really effective about this story is that it uses this kind of horror genre
To explore.
to explore the cycle of violence.
And the idea of rehabilitation
Is it even possible?
is even possible. Can someone like Crazy K, who's done such terrible things,
Can he be redeemed?
can he be redeemed? Can he be changed?
Or is he doomed to repeat his past?
Right. And I think the film leaves that question open.
It does.
It doesn't give you an easy answer.
It makes you think about it.
Yeah, it makes you think about the complexities of the criminal justice system.
And the challenges of rehabilitation.
Yeah, and the idea that maybe sometimes...
Change isn't possible.
Right.
Or maybe it is.
Maybe it is, but it's a really tough journey.
It's a tough journey.
And it's not always successful.
And it's not always successful.
And I think the film does a really good job of kind of showing both sides of that.
Yeah, it presents the arguments for and against rehabilitation.
Right. And it doesn't shy away from the darkness.
No, it's a very dark story.
It's a very dark story, but it's also a very compelling story.
It is.
And it's one that I think will stick with you long after you've seen the film.
I agree.
All right, so we talked about the four stories.
The Four-Tailed.
The four tales from the hood.
But let's not forget about our three entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Stackball and Bulldog.
They're still stuck in that funeral home
With Mr. Sims.
with Mr. Sims, and things are about to get a whole lot worse for them.
Oh, yeah.
But we'll save that for the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, so remember we left off with Stackball and Bulldog.
Still in that funeral home.
In that funeral home with Mr. Sims.
Yeah, and the tension is building.
Oh, it's palpable.
You can cut it with a knife.
Yeah, you just know something bad's gonna happen.
You just know it, and then bam, the rug is pulled out from under you.
Oh, yeah.
It turns out they've been dead the whole time.
The whole time.
The entire time. They're walking around, they're joking, they're arguing, they're trying to score drugs.
They're corpses.
They are corpses.
It's such a brilliant twist.
Such a good twist.
And it ties all the stories together so perfectly.
Yeah, it really does. It brings it all back to this idea of consequences.
Karmic justice.
Karmic justice, What you
Yeah.
sow is what you reap.
Exactly.
And then the transformation of Mr. Sims.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Talk about chilling.
chills, chills, chills.
Clarence Williams III just nails it.
He's amazing.
He's absolutely mesmerizing in that final scene.
His voice, his eyes, even the way he moves.
It's pure evil.
It's the devil.
It is the devil.
And then that funeral home
Oh my God.
transforms into this hellscape.
It's like the gates of hell have opened up.
Right there in Cell Central.
Yeah, and those screams from Stackball and Bulldog.
Oh my God. I mean,
As they realize their fate.
they're so haunted.
It's a perfect ending to a truly terrifying film.
It really is. So we've talked about the individual stories, the social commentary, the horror elements.
Yeah.
But let's zoom out for a second.
Okay.
What do you think is the overall message of Tales from the Hood?
I think it's multi-layered.
Okay.
On one level, it's a critique of the systems and institutions that perpetuate injustice and inequality, particularly within the Black community.
Yeah, it's holding a mirror up to society and forcing us to confront these uncomfortable truths.
Exactly.
And it's not doing it in a way that's preachy or condescending.
No, it's using horror as a vehicle
Yeah.
to deliver that message.
It's entertaining. It's engaging.
And it's thought-provoking.
Yeah, it makes you think.
And I think that's what makes it so effective.
Absolutely. And it's also a celebration of Black storytelling.
Drawing from folklore, urban legends, real-world experiences.
Yeah, it's a really unique blend of genres and styles.
And it creates a truly powerful cinematic experience.
And it's a testament to the talent involved, both in front of and behind the camera.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we've already talked about Clarence Williams III, but the entire cast delivers such compelling performances.
Even with limited screen time.
Right, even with limited screen time, they really make these characters come to life.
They bring a lot of depth and humanity to these roles.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes the horror elements even more effective.
Because you care about these characters.
Yeah, you're invested in their stories.
And so when something bad happens to them,
It hits harder.
it hits harder.
Yeah. And speaking of behind the camera, let's talk about the director, Rusty Cundiff.
Oh, yeah. He did an amazing job.
This was his directorial debut, right?
It was. And what a debut it was.
I mean, he really knocked it out of the park.
He also co-wrote the screenplay.
So he had a really clear vision for this film.
And it shows.
And it really tells...
He knew exactly what he wanted to say and how he wanted to say it.
And what's interesting is that he came from a comedy background.
He did, yeah. He was a writer and performer on In Living Color.
Which is so interesting because you can definitely see that comedic sensibility
Woven into the fabric of Tales from the Hood.
Yeah, it's not just straight horror. There are these moments of dark humor.
Yeah, and satire.
That kind of lighten the mood.
But also make you think.
Yeah, it's a really clever balance.
And it's worth noting that the film was executive produced by Spike Lee.
Oh, yeah?
Who was already a major force in Black cinema at the time. His involvement definitely helped elevate the film's profile.
Yeah, it gave it more legitimacy.
And it ensured that it reached a wider audience.
Yeah, and I think Spike Lee's influence is definitely felt in the film.
Yeah, you can see his fingerprints on it.
Yeah, especially in terms of the social commentary.
And the way it tackles these really complex issues.
And the film's legacy is undeniable.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it spawned 2 sequels.
Which maybe didn't quite reach the heights of the original.
No.
But they still continued to explore those themes of social justice and inequality.
Yeah, and I think it also paved the way for a new wave of Black horror filmmakers.
Jordan Peele.
Yeah. Get at us.
Those films definitely owe a debt to Tales from the Hood.
Absolutely.
It was a pioneer in that sense.
Yeah, it showed that Black horror could be both entertaining and thought-provoking.
And that it had a place on the big screen.
And it could make money.
And it could make money, which is important.
Yeah, because that's what Hollywood cares about.
Unfortunately.
So final thoughts. Why do you think Tales from the Hood continues to resonate with audiences all these years later?
Because it's more than just a horror movie. It's a reflection of the anxieties and realities that continue to plague marginalized communities.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that the fight for justice and equality is ongoing.
And it's a testament to the power of storytelling to expose those truths.
Exactly.
Well said, well said. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, I highly recommend checking it out.
It's a classic for a reason.
Just maybe not watch it alone at night.
Agreed.
Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, anything else you want to add?
Oh, I did find something interesting.
Okay.
The film was originally titled Fear of a Black Hat.
Oh, wow.
A play on the title of Public Enemy's groundbreaking album, Fear of a Black Planet.
That's amazing.
I love that.
That's so fitting.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, both the album and the film tackle issues of race power, social injustice head on.
But ultimately, the filmmakers decided that Tales from the Hood was a more fitting title.
Yeah, it's more evocative.
It encompasses the anthology nature of the film and its focus on urban legends and folklore.
It's a great title.
And one last thing, the film's score is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that.
It's so good.
It's so good.
It blends elements of hip-hop, R&B, orchestral music.
It's really unique.
It creates this really eerie and haunting soundscape.
It really adds to the atmosphere of the film.
It does.
And it sticks with you long after the credits have rolled.
It's one of those scores that you just want to listen to on repeat.
I agree.
It's that good.
All right, folks, that about wraps up our deep dive into Tales from the Hood. I hope you all enjoyed this deep dive into Tales from the Hood.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating film.
It really is, and it's one that I think deserves to be seen and discussed.
Absolutely.
And appreciated for its artistry and its social relevance.
It's not your typical horror movie.
No, it's not. It's so much more than that.
And I think for those who haven't seen it, it's worth emphasizing that it's not just about shock value or gratuitous violence.
Yeah. Right. It's not trying to exploit these issues for cheap thrills.
Exactly. It's about using the language of horror to shed light on real-world problems.
To make them visceral and impossible to ignore.
And it does so with intelligence, wit, and a deep understanding of the Black experience in America.
It's really well done.
Yeah, and it's also really entertaining.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fun movie to watch.
Even though it deals with some very serious subject matter.
Right. It's got that balance of horror, comedy, social commentary.
It's a unique blend.
It really is. And I think that's why it stood the test of time.
I agree.
So before we wrap up completely, I have to ask, what are some of your favorite moments from the film?
Oh, man, there are so many.
I know, right? It's hard to choose.
But I think aside from the unforgettable transformation of Mr. Sims,
Yeah.
I think the scene in Boys Do Get Bruised where Walter's drawings start to come to life.
Oh, my God.
Yes.
That's truly chilling.
The way they use the shadows and the lighting.
And the sound design.
Yes, the sound design is amazing.
It's all subtle whispers and creaks. It just builds this atmosphere of tension.
And you're just waiting for something to jump out at you.
And it does eventually.
It does.
And it's terrifying.
And visually, the dolls in KKK Comeuppance.
Oh my God, those dolls.
Was so unsettling.
They're nightmare fuel.
They are.
They're like these grotesque representations of hate and oppression.
And they embody the film's message of karmic retribution perfectly.
Oh yeah, they get what they deserve.
They do.
And for me, the sensory deprivation chamber scene in Hardcore Convert.
Yeah.
Pure psychological terror.
It's so claustrophobic.
Disorienting.
And you just feel Crazy K's panic and desperation.
As he's forced to confront his past.
It's a really powerful scene.
It is.
And it speaks to the film's willingness to explore the darker aspects of human nature.
Yeah, and the complex issues surrounding crime and punishment.
So for anyone out there who's a fan of horror films that go beyond the surface,
that make you think as much as they make you scream,
I highly recommend checking out Tales from the Hood.
It's a classic for a reason.
And if you're looking for more deep dives into fascinating films and TV shows,
be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel.
We've got tons of great content coming your way.
So stay tuned.
And until next time,
keep it creepy.
Keep it creepy.